Mrs. Eleanor Finch's voice through my apartment wall sounded like gravel mixed with concern. "Derek, you might want to come upstairs. There's been a lot of activity in your place tonight." I stood in my garage workshop at 11 p.m., hands covered in engine grease, wondering why my 60-something neighbor was calling me about my own apartment. Nothing like a retired teacher with binoculars and a police scanner to keep your marriage honest. "What kind of activity, Mrs. Finch?" "The kind where your wife brings home guests while you're supposedly in Cleveland." My wrench slipped. 3 years of marriage, and Vanessa had never mentioned having anyone over during my work trips. She barely tolerated my friends when I was home. "Guests?" "Jordan Mercer, your old business partner. He's been visiting quite regularly when you travel. Always brings his own craft beer. Never tips the doorman." The workshop suddenly felt smaller. Jordan and I had split our restoration business 2 years ago when he decided Instagram influence paid better than actual work. These days, he spent more time photographing cars than fixing them. "How regularly, Mrs. Finch?" "Every work trip for the past 3 months. Derek, honey, they're not exactly subtle about it." I set down my tools and walked to the window. Our apartment building rose 12 floors above my street-level garage. Vanessa's silhouette moved across our bedroom window. Another shadow joined her. "I appreciate you telling me. Someone had to. And Derek? You might want to check the building's security log. The doorman keeps records of all visitors." The line went quiet. Mrs. Finch had delivered her intelligence and retreated, leaving me alone with the implications. I pulled out my phone and called Tommy Reeves, the night security guard. We'd shared enough late-night conversations about sports and city politics that he owed me a favor. "Tommy, it's Derek Ashford from 4B. Can you do me a solid and check visitor logs for my apartment? Past few months?" "Sure thing, Derek. Give me a minute." I waited, listening to papers shuffle through the phone. Jordan Mercer signed in 14 times since September, always when you were listed as traveling. Want the specific dates? Text them to me. My phone buzzed with a list that matched every business trip I'd taken: Cleveland, Detroit, Pittsburgh. Every time I left town to evaluate potential restoration projects, Jordan had signed into my building within hours. I'm more WD-40 than champagne, but I'm not stupid. The pattern was clear enough to read without a manual. Vanessa's PR career had been climbing steadily. Late nights at the office, weekend client events, networking dinners. I'd supported it all, proud of her ambition. Apparently, her networking had expanded beyond professional boundaries. I called the airline and changed my Cleveland return flight from Thursday afternoon to Wednesday at dawn. Then I dialed Bernard Holt, the best locksmith in the city. "Bernard, it's Derek Ashford. I need an emergency lock change tomorrow morning. Early." "How early?" 7 a.m. "And Bernard, I'll pay double for discretion." "You got it, Derek. Standard deadbolts?" "Everything. Door locks, mailbox, storage unit, complete security overhaul." Next, I called Murphy's Moving Company. They specialized in quick residential relocations, no questions asked. "I need everything moved out of an apartment by noon tomorrow. Yes, everything. You'll want gloves." "How much stuff we talking about?" 2 bedrooms, fully furnished. Pack it all." "That's a big job for short notice. I'll pay rush rates." They agreed to meet me at 8 a.m. with a full crew and truck. I spent the rest of the night in my workshop, hands busy with engine repairs while my mind calculated logistics. If you're going to get played, at least write the ending yourself. By dawn, I had a plan that would make Mrs. Finch proud. Bernard Holt arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying a toolbox that looked like it could crack a bank vault. He was a thin man with steady hands and the kind of face that forgot conversations immediately after having them. "New locks for all entry points?" "Everything. I want complete security replacement." He nodded and got to work. The sound of drilling echoed through the hallway as I waited for the moving crew. Murphy's Moving showed up with 2 guys who looked like they'd moved everything from pianos to elephants. The older one, Frank, surveyed the building's narrow hallway. Tight squeeze, but we've seen worse. What floor? Fourth. Elevator's working. What exactly are we moving? Everything that belongs to me. I'll point out what stays. We rode the elevator up while Bernard finished installing the final deadbolt. The apartment door stood open, and I could hear the shower running in the master bathroom. Start with the living room, I told Frank. Box everything carefully. This isn't a rush job. The crew began wrapping furniture and electronics while I supervised. Every piece had a story. The leather couch we'd bought together, the television I'd saved 6 months to afford, the coffee table Vanessa had insisted we needed. All of it went into boxes. I walked to the bedroom and started packing my clothes. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted like evidence of recent activity. 2 wine glasses sat on Vanessa's nightstand next to a bottle I didn't recognize. In the closet, I found a men's watch that wasn't mine. Expensive, monogrammed with Jordan's initials. The shower stopped. Derek? Vanessa's voice carried surprise and panic. What are you doing home? Packing. She appeared in the bedroom doorway wearing a towel, hair dripping. Behind her, Jordan emerged from the bathroom with my spare robe wrapped around his waist. The 3 of us stood there for a moment that stretched like taffy. This isn't what it looks like, Vanessa said. I held up Jordan's watch. Really? Because it looks like my best friend has been using my apartment as a hotel while I work out of town. Jordan cleared his throat. Derek, man, we should talk about this. We are talking about it. You're in my bedroom, wearing my robe, after sleeping in my bed. What's left to discuss? Frank appeared in the doorway with a clipboard. Mr. Ashford, we've got the living room packed. Should we start on the kitchen? Everything in the kitchen belongs to me. Pack it all. Vanessa stepped forward. You can't just take everything. Watch me. I walked to the dresser and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Inside were copies of the building's visitor logs, printed and highlighted. Jordan's name appeared 14 times in 3 months. You 2 have been sloppy. Mrs. Finch has been documenting your little sleepovers. The doorman keeps records. Even the security cameras caught you. Jordan's face went pale. You're recording us? I don't need to. You've been performing for the whole building. I handed them each a piece of paper. 30-day notice to vacate. You have 5 minutes to get dressed and leave. Everything else belongs to the moving truck. Vanessa's towel slipped slightly as she grabbed the notice. Derek, please, we can work this out. We could have worked it out before you decided to redecorate my bedroom with Jordan. It just happened. 14 times? That's not just happened. That's a subscription service. Jordan tried to step between us. Look, Derek, I know this is messed up, but... I moved closer to him, close enough to smell my own shampoo in his hair. But what? You thought I'd never find out? You thought I was too stupid to notice? That's not what I meant. Get dressed. Both of you. You have 3 minutes before I call building security. They scrambled for clothes while Frank and his partner continued packing. The efficiency was beautiful. Every dish, every book, every piece of furniture that belonged to me disappeared into boxes and onto the truck. Bernard appeared with a set of new keys. All locks changed. These are yours. I handed him cash and watched Vanessa and Jordan dress in yesterday's clothes. They looked like teenagers caught by parents, fumbling with buttons and zippers. Where are we supposed to go? Vanessa asked. That's not my problem anymore. Jordan pulled on his shoes. Derek, come on. We've been friends since high school. Friends don't use each other's beds as motels. I followed them to the door and watched them walk toward the elevator. Jordan pressed the call button repeatedly, as if that would make it arrive faster. Oh, Jordan, I called out. You might want to check on your car. The elevator doors opened, and they disappeared inside. I waited 30 seconds, then walked to the window that overlooked the street. Jordan's BMW sat in the visitor parking space where he'd left it the night before. All 4 tires were flat. The hood displayed a message I'd carved with my apartment key. Cheater parks here. Mrs. Finch appeared at her window across the courtyard and gave me a thumbs up. The moving crew finished loading the truck by noon. The apartment stood empty except for a few items that clearly belonged to Vanessa: her designer shoes, some jewelry, a pile of fashion magazines. I left those items on the kitchen counter with a note. Next time, rent a hotel. D. Then I locked the door with my new keys and walked downstairs to my workshop. My phone buzzed with text messages from Vanessa and Jordan, but I didn't read them. Instead, I called Mrs. Finch. Eleanor, would you like to grab some coffee? I think we should discuss what you observed over the past few months. I thought you'd never ask, dear. I have photographs. Mrs. Finch's apartment looked like a museum of mid-century furniture and surveillance equipment. She had binoculars positioned at 3 different windows, a police scanner crackling softly in the corner, and a notebook filled with handwritten observations. I've been documenting unusual activity in the building for 15 years, she explained, pouring coffee from a pot that looked older than I was. It started as a hobby, but it's become quite useful for situations like yours. She opened the notebook to a section labeled Ashford, Derek, APT 4B, and showed me 3 months of detailed entries. September 12th. Jordan Mercer arrives 9:47 p.m. Derek's truck not in garage. Lights on until 2:30 a.m. September 18th. Mercer brings overnight bag and wine. Vanessa opens door in negligee. Derek in Pittsburgh per building manager. September 25th. Mercer's car parked overnight. Bedroom curtains closed all evening. Derek's social media shows Cleveland Hotel. The entries continued through October and November, each one more detailed than the last. You're thorough, Eleanor. I was a high school principal for 32 years. You learned to document everything. She pulled out a manila envelope filled with photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Jordan entering the building. Vanessa greeting him at the apartment door. Silhouettes in the bedroom window. Nothing inappropriate, mind you, just evidence of patterns. I studied the photos. The timestamps matched perfectly with my travel schedule. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I thought about it, but marriage is complicated, and I didn't want to interfere unless I was certain. What made you certain? She pointed to a photo dated 3 days ago. Jordan and Vanessa on the apartment balcony, sharing what looked like an intimate conversation. She was showing him your travel calendar, planning their next encounter right there in daylight. That's when I knew they'd gotten careless enough to deserve consequences. My phone rang. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Eleanor suggested, but put it on speaker. I want to hear her explanation. I accepted the call. What do you want, Vanessa? Derek, please. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Which part? The 14 visits or the overnight stays? It's not what you think. Eleanor rolled her eyes and made notes in her book. What I think is that you've been using our apartment as your personal playground while I work to pay the rent. Jordan was helping me plan a surprise for you, for our anniversary. Our anniversary is in March. It's December. Silence on the line. We were planning ahead. Eleanor wrote liar in capital letters and showed it to me. Vanessa, I have photographs, security logs, and witness testimony. Whatever story you're preparing, save it for someone who wasn't married to you for 3 years. Where am I supposed to live? Jordan's place. You two seem comfortable with shared accommodations. Derek, please. I hung up. Eleanor closed her notebook. What's your next move? I'm not sure. The immediate problem is solved, but I keep thinking about how long this was going on. 3 months that I know about. Maybe longer. Oh, it was longer. She opened a different section of the notebook labeled Historical Observations. I noticed Jordan visiting when you weren't home as early as last spring. I didn't think much of it at first. Friends dropped by. But the pattern became clear when I started paying attention. 6 months. They'd been carrying on for 6 months while I worked extra hours to support Vanessa's career ambitions. There's something else you should know, Eleanor continued. Jordan's been bragging about it. Bragging? He frequents the Velvet Hammer downtown. I have a friend who bartends there. Jordan's been telling people he's helping out a lonely housewife while her clueless husband works out of town. The coffee cup cracked in my hand. He used those words? According to my source, yes. He seemed to think it was amusing. I set down the broken cup and walked to Eleanor's window. The city stretched out below us, full of people living their lives, making their choices, dealing with their consequences. Eleanor, how would you feel about expanding your surveillance operation? What did you have in mind? Jordan likes to brag. Vanessa likes to manipulate. They both think they're smarter than everyone around them. I think it's time to test that theory. She smiled and picked up her binoculars. Derek, I thought you'd never ask. What's our first target? The Velvet Hammer. I want to know everything Jordan says, everyone he talks to, and every story he tells. Consider it done. But what about Vanessa? She works in public relations. Her entire career depends on reputation and image. Let's see how she handles some negative publicity. Eleanor opened a fresh page in her notebook and wrote, Operation Sloppy Seconds at the top. I like the way you think, Derek. This is going to be educational. The Velvet Hammer occupied a corner building in the gentrified downtown district, the kind of place where craft cocktails cost $18 and everyone pretended to be more important than they actually were. Perfect hunting ground for Jordan's ego. I spent Tuesday evening at the bar, nursing a whiskey and listening to conversations. Eleanor's friend Rita worked the evening shift and had agreed to point out Jordan when he arrived. At 9:30, Jordan walked in wearing a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He'd styled his hair differently, trying to look like the influencer he claimed to be. Rita nodded in his direction. That's him. Usually sits at the corner booth and holds court. I watched Jordan order an expensive bourbon and scan the room for an audience. Within minutes, he'd attracted two young women who seemed impressed by his practiced charm. The secret to success, I heard him say, is knowing what people want before they know it themselves. One of the women giggled. Like what? Take my best friend's wife, for example. Beautiful woman, married to a guy who thinks romance means changing her oil on schedule. She needed someone who understood her sophisticated tastes. My grip tightened on the whiskey glass. You're seeing a married woman? The second woman asked. It's complicated. Her husband travels constantly for work, leaves her alone in this amazing apartment while he plays with car engines in some garage. She deserves better. Doesn't that make you feel guilty? Jordan shrugged. He's too focused on his little business to notice what's happening in his own marriage. If he can't keep his wife interested, that's not my problem. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Besides, Jordan continued, she's the one who initiated everything. Called me one night when he was out of town, said she was lonely. What kind of friend would I be if I ignored her needs? The women exchanged glances. Even they seemed uncomfortable with his casual attitude toward betrayal. What happens when he finds out? He won't. The guy's completely clueless, lives in his own world of grease and spare parts, probably wouldn't notice if his wife moved out permanently. I had enough. I stood up and walked to Jordan's booth. Hey, Jordan, mind if I join you? His face went white. The women looked between us, sensing sudden tension. Derek, what are you doing here? Having a drink, listening to interesting stories. I sat down without invitation. Ladies, has Jordan told you about his living situation? Living situation? He's currently homeless. Got evicted yesterday for inappropriate use of someone else's property. Jordan stood up quickly. We should go somewhere private to talk. Why? You seemed comfortable discussing private matters with strangers. The women gathered their purses, clearly wanting to escape the awkward situation. Actually, I continued, Jordan's got quite a story. Tell them about the security cameras. Derek, stop. Or the neighbor who documented everything. Or the 14 visits logged by building security. Jordan's carefully constructed image crumbled visibly. The women left without saying goodbye. You recorded me, Jordan said when we were alone. You recorded yourself. I just happened to be listening. I showed him the recording on my phone. 3 minutes of you bragging about sleeping with my wife and calling me clueless. Want to hear it again? What do you want? I want you to understand something. You think you're clever, but you're just sloppy. Sloppy enough to get caught, sloppy enough to brag about it, and sloppy enough to think there wouldn't be consequences. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Jordan. Try not to tell any more stories about your friend's wife. You might not like how they end. I walked out of the bar and called Eleanor from the parking lot. Phase 1 complete. Jordan's been neutralized at his favorite bragging spot. Excellent. I have an update on Vanessa. What did you find? She's been calling in sick to work. Her supervisor is getting suspicious. Apparently she's missed 3 important client meetings this week. Stress will do that. There's more. I contacted my niece who works in PR downtown. Word is spreading about Vanessa's personal situation. The industry is smaller than people think. How fast does gossip travel in PR circles? Faster than wildfire. By Friday, everyone in the business will know she was caught having an affair. I smiled for the first time in days. Eleanor, you're a treasure. I'm just getting started, dear. Tomorrow I'm having lunch with the president of the Downtown Business Association. She's very interested in hearing about integrity in professional relationships. You're going to destroy her career. I'm going to let her destroy her own career. I'm just providing the documentation. By Thursday morning, Vanessa's professional world had begun collapsing. Eleanor's intelligence network had spread the story through every relevant social circle, and the consequences were building momentum like an avalanche. My phone rang at 8 a.m. Derek, it's Vanessa. We need to meet. No, we don't. Please, my job is in jeopardy. Someone's been spreading rumors about us. Not rumors, facts. My supervisor wants to suspend me pending an ethics review. This could ruin my career. You should have considered that before you decided to redecorate my bedroom with Jordan. Derek, please. I'll do anything to fix this. There's nothing to fix. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences. I hung up and called Eleanor. How's our campaign progressing? Better than expected. My niece reports that Vanessa's biggest client is reconsidering their contract. Apparently, they don't want their brand associated with someone who lacks personal integrity. And Jordan? He's been trying to rebuild his image on social media, but it's not working. Someone keeps posting comments about his relationship ethics on his influencer posts. Someone? My grandnephew is quite skilled with computers. He's been very helpful in ensuring Jordan's story reaches the appropriate audiences. I had to admire Eleanor's thoroughness. She'd built an intelligence operation that would make government agencies jealous. There's one more thing, Eleanor continued. Jordan's been trying to contact Vanessa, but she's not responding. I think their alliance is fracturing under pressure. Good. Let them turn on each other. Derek, are you satisfied with the results so far? I considered the question. Jordan's reputation was ruined. Vanessa's career was collapsing. They'd both learned that actions have consequences. But something still bothered me. Eleanor, I want to arrange one final meeting. All 3 of us together. That sounds dangerous. Not dangerous. Educational. I want them to understand exactly how their sloppiness led to their downfall. Where would you hold such a meeting? Neutral ground, somewhere public but private enough for honest conversation. I know just the place. Eleanor suggested the community room at the downtown library. Public building, security cameras, but private enough for confrontational discussion. I called Vanessa first. Meet me at the downtown library community room tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bring Jordan. Why would I bring Jordan? Because this concerns both of you, and I want to settle everything at once. Derek, I don't think... 7 p.m., don't be late. I called Jordan next. Library, tomorrow, 7 p.m., Vanessa will be there. I'm not coming to some ambush. It's not an ambush. It's a final accounting. You two created this situation together. You can face the consequences together. What consequences? You already kicked us out and ruined our reputations. Those were just the opening moves. Tomorrow, you learn how the game ends. I spent Friday preparing for the confrontation. Eleanor provided me with a complete dossier of evidence: photographs, recordings, witness statements, and a timeline of their affair that stretched back 8 months. At 6:30, I arrived at the library and set up the community room. I arranged 3 chairs in a triangle and placed copies of all the evidence on a table in the center. Vanessa arrived first, looking haggard and desperate. Her usual polished appearance had deteriorated into something approaching honesty. "Derek, thank you for agreeing to meet. We can work this out." "Sit down, Vanessa. Wait for Jordan." Jordan arrived 10 minutes late, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. "All right, Derek, we're here. What's this about?" I gestured to the chairs. "Sit down, both of you." They sat reluctantly, avoiding eye contact with each other. "This is about consequences," I began. "For 8 months, you two carried on an affair in my apartment, spending my money, using my possessions, and laughing about my ignorance." "It wasn't like that," Vanessa protested. I picked up Eleanor's notebook and read aloud. September 25th. Mercer's car parked overnight. Vanessa greets him wearing Derek's old college t-shirt. They order pizza using Derek's credit card. Jordan shifted uncomfortably. "You had us watched?" "You watched yourselves. You performed your affair in full view of anyone who cared to look." I spread the photographs across the table. "Mrs. Finch documented everything because you were too arrogant to be discreet." Vanessa stared at the photos. "This is invasion of privacy." "Privacy? You were using my apartment, my bed, my marriage as your playground. Where's my privacy in that equation?" I played the recording from the Velvet Hammer. Jordan's voice filled the room, bragging about the affair and calling me clueless. "Jordan, explain to Vanessa how you described her to strangers in a bar." Jordan's face flushed red. That was taken out of context. What context makes it acceptable to brag about sleeping with your best friend's wife? Vanessa turned to stare at Jordan. "You were bragging about us?" "It wasn't bragging, I was just what? Just telling strangers that I was a lonely housewife who seduced you?" "You did seduce me. And you told everyone about it." I watched their alliance crumble in real time. The pressure of consequences had revealed their true characters. "This is exactly what I wanted you to see," I said. "Neither of you is capable of loyalty. You betrayed me, and now you're betraying each other." Vanessa stood up. "Derek, I made a mistake, but Jordan manipulated the situation." Jordan jumped up. "I manipulated it? You called me. You invited me over. You planned everything around Derek's travel schedule. Because you suggested it. Because you complained about being lonely." I let them argue for several minutes, each one blaming the other for their shared betrayal. Finally, I stood up. "Enough." They stopped arguing and looked at me. "You're both responsible. You're both guilty, and you're both going to live with the consequences." I gathered the evidence from the table. "Vanessa, your career is over. Word has spread through every PR firm in the city. No one will hire someone who can't maintain basic professional ethics." "Derek, please." "Jordan, your influencer reputation is finished. Everyone knows you're willing to betray your closest friends for personal gratification. What brand wants to associate with that? You can't destroy our lives over one mistake." "One mistake? 8 months of systematic betrayal isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You chose to prioritize your desires over loyalty, honesty, and basic human decency." I walked toward the door. "The game is over. You lost. Both of you." Vanessa called after me. "What happens now?" I turned back to look at them one final time. They sat in their chairs like defendants awaiting sentencing, their faces showing the full weight of their choices. Now you start over, separately, and you remember that actions have consequences, even when you think nobody's watching. I left them in the community room, still arguing about whose fault everything was. Outside, Eleanor waited in her car. How did it go? Exactly as planned. They turned on each other the moment pressure was applied. Are you satisfied with the outcome? I thought about the question as we drove through the city. Vanessa's career was ruined. Jordan's reputation was destroyed. Their affair had cost them everything they'd built. Yes, I said finally. Justice has been served. Eleanor smiled and patted my hand. Derek, you've learned an important lesson about human nature. What's that? Sloppy people always get caught eventually. The only question is whether someone like me is watching when it happens. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Eleanor, remind me never to get on your bad side. Don't worry, dear. I only target people who deserve it. We drove home through the city lights, two allies who had successfully completed a mission of accountability. The game was over. Justice had been served. And Derek Ashford had learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own choices.